Planned obsolescence. Planned obsolescence is a policy of producing consumer goods that become rapidly obsolete and so require replacement, achieved by frequent changes in design, termination of the supply of spare parts, and the use of non-durable materials. I read you that definition because unfortunately all of these consumer grade grills are designed to fail after a period of time. For example, I purchased this next grill about 6 years ago. 6 years ago. And the firebox is manufactured of a painted carbon steel, and it has a hole through it. So now I'm left with the decision, do I try and repair it, which a blown out hole in a carbon steel firebox, I mean, it's difficult to repair and it's really not worth repairing. So this grill to me, unfortunately, is pretty much junk at this point. However, I did find a higher grade grill that somebody was throwing out on the side of the road, so I picked this up for free. Now the reason I picked up this grill was because the firebox was manufactured of a stainless steel material, which is much more durable than the painted carbon steel. Now unfortunately the internals were completely shot, meaning that the grates were shot, the grease shields for the burn tubes and the burn tubes were completely rusted through. However, the firebox, being a stainless steel material, is in good shape, and I'm confident that if I restore this grill by replacing these internal components, I should be able to get 10 years out of this grill. In terms of cost of replacement materials, I've spent probably $65. I'll leave links for everything in the description down below. But before we get into replacing the internals and restoring this grill, I want to talk about the different grades of materials that these grills are commonly manufactured out of. So, first we have a 316 stainless steel. According to my research, that is one of the highest grade stainless steels in terms of consumer grade grills. It's pretty uncommon though, I would imagine, because it's expensive to work with and manufacture. But 316 again is the best. It's a marine grade stainless steel, non-ferrous, and it really has the best corrosion resistance. Moving down a tier, we go to 304 stainless steel. And that is commonly what you come across in a lot of these grill parts. Now, for example, the replacement grates I got for this grill, I decided to go with a 304 stainless steel. 304 is non-ferrous and it has excellent corrosion resistance. The reason I went with the stainless steel, the 304 stainless steel grill grates, as opposed to the cast iron, I find that the cast iron grates don't last. And another issue I have with cast iron grates, if you don't take really good care of them, they start to corrode, they'll expand, they'll blow out. And I actually was biting into a burger about a year ago. I had a hard bit in that burger and I chipped my tooth, and my tooth hasn't been right since. I did get it repaired, but I don't know, something's not right. So I don't like cast iron grates. Again, moving down a tier, we have 430 stainless steel. It has good corrosion resistance. However, 430 is ferrous. It is magnetic, and it's just not as durable as a 316 or a 304. Now, the stamp panels on the exterior of these grills, I'm pretty sure is a 430 stainless. It might be a 443 as well, but I know it's a 430 or a 443 because it is ferrous. It is magnetic. And you can see that there's some blemishes on it. We're going to see if we can bring this back to life. And then moving down to the lowest tier of stainless steel, we have a 443, and it's corrosion resistant and it's ferrous. So that's my spiel. Just to show you the damage, here's the next grill. If I open up cover, take a look at the grates. I really tried to take good care of this grill. I tried to cover it before every rainstorm, but even so, planned obsolescence got us here. So if we focus on the grates, you can see that they are corroding and they are expanding. This is very dangerous because the last thing you want is for a chunk of that steel to pop, land on top of a burger, somebody bites into that burger, chips their tooth, and then their teeth are never right again. Ask me how I know. By the way, it didn't happen on my grill, it happened at a buddy's house. But if we look down into the firebox, you can see that hole down in there. And that is why I do not like painted carbon steel fireboxes. They just don't seem to last more than 5, 6, 7 years, even if you take really good care of the grill. So let's take a look at this Kenmore. I suspect this grill is much older than my grill, and we have a stainless steel firebox. I'm going to test it. It is ferrous. So I believe that this is likely a 430 stainless steel, which means it has good corrosion resistance. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better than painted carbon steel. You see there is some rust forming here, but this is all very solid. Additionally, the upper grates, these appear to be stainless as well. We'll test it to see if it's ferrous, and these are non-ferrous, so I'm pretty confident that these upper grates are actually 304 stainless steel, which I really like. If we go back over to the next grill, see these grates are also a painted carbon steel material. Get you in focus here. See how that's rusting out? Yeah, definitely stay away from the carbon steel nonsense and the cast iron stuff. Go all stainless if you can. But this stainless steel down here is still very strong. I think we are going to be able to get another 8 years out of this grill once we replace everything internally. But if you take a look at the burn tubes, obviously they're shot. We need new shields for the burn tubes, and obviously we need new grates, but have no fear, I have all those components, including new sparkers. First thing I want to do with the free grill is to take it outside. We'll give it a good power wash, let it dry, bring it back inside, and try and polish it up, because it's important to have a good looking grill. Well, I tell you, after power washing this grill, it's starting to really look like something. I think when I'm all finished with this grill, my neighbor's going to be pretty upset that he ended up throwing it out, but to be fair, there's a lot of sweat equity going into this thing. So I actually just did a test between baking soda paste and stainless steel specific Barkeeper's Friend to see which does a better job at removing rust spots. I'm going to keep using the Barkeeper's Friend. That gives you any idea as to how the video went. But to be fair, the baking soda actually did a really good job. I'll try to remember to leave a link for that in the description down below. But anyway, I'm just going to continue with cleaning and polishing the stainless steel, getting all these rust spots out with this Barkeeper's Friend. So let me keep going here and I'll check back in when we are ready for the next step. Alright, it's been a few days since I worked on this grill. I had to order some 304 stainless steel screws, self-tapping hex screws. We're actually going to need them when we reassemble everything in the firebox. So what I want to focus on now is replacing the spark plugs as well as swapping out the spark power supply. So these spark power supply systems are very similar between manufacturers. I tested the one out on this grill, which we are fixing, and it is faulty. So I salvaged the one off the other grill, I took it off, and basically you have the electronics, they sit behind the tin back here, and then this just protrudes through a hole in the tin and it gets tightened on with one of these nuts. It's very similar to how a toggle switch is installed, and then finally, you know, your AA would go in there, and then we have our cap. And in this case, this one's just a momentary push button, and that's what supplies power to the electronics. And then the spark is distributed from behind this unit by way of course, all the spark wires. So if you ever need to replace the spark power supply unit or an individual spark plug, it's very simple. These just connect by way of pin connector in the back of the power supply back here. So you can replace one, you can replace 6. It's really no big deal. So anyway, I had to remove the 4 spark plugs in the burn chamber now, and I'm going to remove this old power supply, and that'll be one more thing off the list. So the spark power supply unit is right here, and I don't have enough clearance to sneak that out just yet. It seems like the way this grill was constructed, it seems like there's a lower portion, and the top portion attaches to the lower portion by way of likely 4 fasteners. So I'm going to loosen up this fastener, lift up, put a piece of cribbing in between here, and see if I get enough clearance to get that power supply unit out of there. So there's a good chance that door might pop out. You can see what I did there. It's giving me plenty of clearance now, I think. Let me take this door out of here as a precaution. Yeah, but that's the way you gotta get this power supply unit out of here apparently. No big deal. Let's disconnect all the wires coming off the old unit. Inside the firebox you can see our old spark plugs that we are going to be removing. Now, if you notice, these old spark plugs are attached directly to the burn chamber. Again, with the new ones, it looks like we are going to attach them directly onto the burn tube. So there's some rusty, appears to be number 2 Phillips head screws holding these in. So let's see if we can get some of these out of here. Well, I suppose the easiest thing to try at this point would be to try and drill these out. Just hope it's not stainless. Okay. There's one. That worked. There's 2. 1 for 4. Alright, now it's time to install the new spark plugs. I am going to install them by way of inserting the connector from the firebox back through the holes that are punched out. I think that's going to be easier than going the other way. So we're about to run into our next problem. Before we get to the next problem though, I just want to show you how these spark plugs get installed into the new burn tube. So if you look by the burn tube, there's a larger hole, then a smaller hole towards the outside. Well, that larger hole on the inside, you're going to insert your spark plug through there. And then on the spark plug, that metal bracket is threaded. So from here you would just take your fastener, come from away from you, thread inwards, and that will secure your sparkers onto the burn tube. Now the burn tube just gets inserted into this hole, and there's, of course, you know, your regulating knob on the other side of this panel, but you can't miss it. You just got to line this up with the hole. So if we turn to the other side of the burn tube, you can see what our next issue is. So this one isn't terrible, but we have our stainless steel firebox, yet we have a carbon steel angle bracket that is supposed to support the end of the burn tube. And this is a wonderful example of planned obsolescence, because what happens with pretty much all these consumer grade grills, over time, these rot away. So, you know, when the end of these burn tube supports break off, most people are like, well, nothing I can do about it, it's junk, might as well throw it out. Well, I'm a little bit more crafty than that, so let me show you what I have planned. What we need to do is we need to engineer a solution to this problem. We need to engineer some new brackets. Of course, I don't want to use carbon steel, so what stainless steel do we have available? Well, we have the old grill with the carbon steel firebox. Let's see what parts we can salvage from this to solve our problem. So this was the cover for the side burner on the grill that I will be throwing out. But this is stainless steel. Of course, it's a lower grade, you know, it's probably 430, but this is a lot better than the carbon steel nonsense that they initially used to support the end of the burn tubes. So I've kind of drawn out what I want to do here. I'm going to make 4 new brackets, and what we're going to have to do, we're going to have to drill 2 holes in each of these brackets. So before I cut this out with an angle grinder, I'm going to mark and drill 2 holes on each of these new brackets. And then from there, how are we going to attach the top of the burn tube onto these brackets? Well, I think what we're going to do, I think we're going to take these fasteners that I just got. These are 304 food grade self-tap number 10 hex fasteners. And we're just going to drive a fastener through the top of this. In fact, you know, now that I'm talking about it, it might be a good idea to pre-drill a hole where I think the burn tube will line up on the top of the bracket. That way we're not pushing down too hard on this, because, you know, it's going to be plenty strong to support the burn tube, but if I'm really trying to push down on here to get a self-tapping fastener through there, it might bend it or distort it slightly. So let's do that. We'll drill 2 holes here and 1 on the top. So I just got the first one installed, and I think we're gonna be all right. So obviously the edges of this are very sharp, so to kind of help me out here, I take a nail and put it through one hole and get that started, so that way it can't really twist on me. The other challenge of installing these new brackets I manufactured is that the self-tap screws I got, these are number 10 304 stainless. They're non-ferrous, they're not magnetic, so they don't really stay in the bit of the driver much. And this does distort the bend a little bit, but I'm not too concerned about it. Just get it lined up. Sometimes I get my needles in here too to kind of stabilize things. It's not the prettiest looking thing, but that will work. I just finished fastening down all 4 rear brackets for the burn tubes, and I think they're going to last a little bit longer than 5 years. Probably going to have to replace that grease tray at some point, but I also vacuumed out the grease tray to try and get as many shavings out of there as possible. But we need to get back to working on the spark system, so let's finish replacing the power supply for our spark wires, and then we will install the burn tubes and ensure that we're getting good spark. And with that spark power supply reconnected, we can lower the top portion of the grill back onto the base. Need to ensure we get this door lined up here. There's a magnet, so we can utilize the magnet to kind of hold it in place. Right, our doors lined up. Beauty. So let's try installing a new burn tube. So again, for these new tubes, this is where our spark plug is going to get inserted to, a larger hole towards the center. And then they do include these little fasteners that get screwed on, which these fasteners are not stainless. Some type of cheapy screw. I mean, in reality, all I got to do is hold the sparker on. However, if they, well, when they corrode, what do? It goes like that, and we're just going to guide the burner into, it's like a little receiver here, and of course your adjustment valve controls the flow of propane. So I'm liking that. That looks pretty good. I'm going to shut the light off for a second and we'll test out the sparker. Sparker's working good. So as for securing the back of the burn tube onto these new brackets, I think I'm just going to take a self-tapping fastener and go straight down. I could use rivets, but again, these hex fasteners are 304 stainless, so if I ever need to replace a burn tube, it's a matter of just zipping this out. I wouldn't have to drill out any rivets in stainless steel. Sometimes it can be tricky to drill through, but material that thin, I don't think we'd have an issue. But yeah, let's just drill this through. Beautiful. I like it. I'm going to do 3 more off camera and then I'll check back in. Alright, just finished reinstalling the burn tubes as well as the spark plugs. Quick tip about the spark plugs. You may find that you're not getting good spark, or the spark might not be bridging from the spark plug directly to the tube. It might be, bridging back onto the bracket itself. Don't be afraid to get in here with a pair of needle nose pliers and adjust the tip of the electrode or spark plug, whatever it's called. So I had to adjust 3 of the 4. So I had to bend them out, and I had to bend the bracket as to where the point was a little bit closer to the burn tube. But testing everything out, camera might not be picking it up, but we're getting real good spark on all 4 burn tubes as well as the side burner. So next issue, these are the drip protectors, and what these do, as hot grease falls down off of the grill grates, these shields deflect the juices around the burn tubes, and that's really important because we don't want grease and soot and whatnot building up on our burn tubes, because we don't want these ports to get clogged up. So this is a very important piece. Now if you take a look at the burn chamber, you could see that there are pre-existing holes, and there used to be brackets, and those brackets used to cradle these trays, which is somewhat important because as you move this grill around, you don't want these trays rattling out of position. Now I was thinking about manufacturing new brackets, and they're just like little C brackets, nothing special. Of course they were made of carbon steel, but I was thinking about manufacturing new brackets out of that side burner stainless steel cover, but I thought, why? A much easier solution, a more practical solution, is to just use these 304 self-tapping hex number 10 stainless steel screws. So I just inserted 2 in the back and 2 in the front, and this drip deflector is now in place just fine, and really that's all you need. It's just pretty important that you do use 304 stainless. You don't want to use any kind of material. And actually the previous owner of this grill actually had the same idea. He had the same issue, and as opposed to using 304 stainless, he just used like some drywall screws, which I don't approve of. He just inserted drywall screws back here. So I do recommend going with the 304 stainless self-tap screws, and that's a good little fix for this issue. So I'm going to continue on, throw the rest of these trays in, and then after I finish installing the rest of these drip guards, I'm going to give this one more vacuum, and then we should be about ready to install the grates, and then I think give this a test. Alright, and the final thing to do here is to install these new 304 stainless grates. And we'll hook up a propane tank and see if she fires. I have a full tank. Let's hook her up, turn her on, test her out. Alright, tank is on. Contact. Beautiful. Well, let's close her up, let her get up to temperature, have a bit of a curing fire, get all the oils off those metals, and then we'll about wrap up this video. Anybody ever watch that movie Chernobyl? They were looking at the gauge and they couldn't figure out why the gauge wasn't moving, and they started tapping on it. I think I'm going to have to swap out the gauge here. Well, ladies and gentlemen, aside from the temperature gauge not functioning, we have successfully restored this grill to its former glory. This thing is putting out some serious heat right now. I will have to address that temperature gauge at some point, but this just goes to show you that just because somebody's throwing out a grill doesn't mean it's trash. Might just need a little bit of love, and a good chance you can bring it back to life if it has a stainless steel firebox. I'm going to show off these burners to save propane because you know how expensive everything is. But yeah, grand total, I think we only have about $65 in this grill. Really happy with the materials as well, and I think we're probably going to get another 6-7 years out of this grill. So that's it for today's video. If you're interested in any of the tools or materials seen in today's video, I'll try and leave links for everything in the description down below. As always, I'd like to thank you for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.